Welcome to the Money to the Masses podcast, putting you in control of your finances. One is an expert with years of experience giving free advice. The other owns his own microphone and can do the odd bit of editing. Here are your hosts, Damien Fahy and Andy Leeks.
Now, Damien, before we get on with this week's podcast, you had something quickly to say about our sponsors.
Yeah, we've got a new sponsor, Money Farm, and Money Farm are an online investment advisor and one of the biggest digital wealth management companies in Europe, so a big thank you to them for sponsoring the podcast. Now, Money Farm create portfolios to maximise long-term returns using ETFs to make incredibly cheap portfolios, and you even get the first £10,000 of your portfolio invested without any charge from Money Farm, and if you enter the code TTM20K into the box when you sign up, you get the first £20,000 of your portfolio invested and run by moneyfarm.com without any charge.
Great stuff. On with this week's show. Hello and welcome to episode 101 of the Money to the Masses podcast with your resident expert, as always, Damien Fahy and me, Andy Leeks. Damien, 101, it sounds good, doesn't it? How you doing?
I'm good, Andy. It does sound good, 101. I'm actually in a fantastic mood about recording 101 because it was one of those things that episode 100 was such fun and it came together really well, I thought, and the feedback we got thanks to your editing, Andy, but it was such hard work. And I kind of feel like this podcast, we've gone back to our normal show and it seems so much easier when you do something really difficult. You go back, it's like when you have two children, when you have your second child, you suddenly realise that actually only having one is a doddle. But when you had the one, you were sitting there thinking having a child is really difficult, much more difficult than having none. And so you only know what it's like. I mean, going back to the normal show is fantastic. So I'm quite pleased because we can just chat and that's it.
Yeah, so this is like wearing tight shoes and then, kick. This is like the feeling of kicking them off at the end of the day.
Yeah, do you know, that's probably the better comparison rather than me talking about having multiple children and regretting it almost. So, but yeah, taking your shoes off, that's what it feels like. So it feels brilliant to be able to sit here. It's no less work in a way in terms of research, but it's a lot less editing. So how has your week been, Andy?
My week's been good, yeah. I mean, not really much to report. I've been I'm back on the dieting. Anyone who's read previous books of mine, I've written about dieting. I kind of consider myself almost to be a bit of a diet expert. And funnily enough, I still get calls from BBC Radio and various people where they picked up my book and then they ask me for little sound bites and bits and pieces. So I am a kind of, weirdly, even though I've got no expertise in it, a bit of a sort of talking head on the subject of dieting. And I'm back on it again. I'm not really dieting, I'm just being healthy and I feel great. I've lost a stone in a couple of weeks and been on my bike. So yeah, I'm raring to go.
Oh, it's good. I love it. Yeah. Well, it's great being a talking head, even if it's about a topic matter that you'd probably never envisaged.
No, exactly. Yeah. What was your week been like anyway? What's been going on in the world of the Fahy?
The world of the Fahy has been an interesting week. It started off actually the day the 100th podcast episode was launched. I went to an award ceremony. I don't really do award ceremonies, partly because you need to be nominated for an award to make it worthwhile going. But actually, we were up for a couple of awards. So the best investment mortgages and pensions site on the Blogger Award. So there's basically all the UK money bloggers. I mean, Money to the Masses is, well, it started off as a blog. I mean, it's progressed really into a much bigger entity and website, but they wanted to celebrate my roots, I suppose, and I was up for a couple of awards, and the podcast was up for an award as well as the best podcast and use of social media. So it was an award to be up for because it's all the best people writing about money who aren't basically journalists, and then seeing who's the best and having the award. So, cut a long story short, we won the best investment pensions and mortgages site, so hooray! And we got the runner up on the social media vlog podcast award, and which is fantastic. So it just shows you how good our podcast is and how much people enjoy it. And put it this way, the person who won, who is a blogger, very well known one, and they obviously do a lot on social media. They even did a talk at the show. So I like to think we were the best podcast because he wasn't a podcast. He won it for his social media antics. So I take that as a podcast win if I were you, Andy. So congratulations to you too.
Well, no, I think you're being kind. We came second, and essentially what's happened here at this award ceremony is it's kind of mirrored life itself. It's basically rubber stamped the fact that you in life, you're a winner, and I'm a bit of a loser. But that's fine. I'm happy with that. I can accept that. I kind of know that's where I sit in this pecking order in this podcast. That's fine. Even the American guy at the beginning of the podcast says, that one's an expert, one's brilliant, and the other one can do an odd bit of editing. I'm happy to sit back and accept that.
Oh, you're being modest, Andy, because you pulled this stuff together. But aside from the awards, which were obviously good fun, and it's great to meet a lot of other people who are out there trying to change the world of finance and money and stuff like that, journalists included, as well as bloggers, and some of them will probably get on the show at some point, so more on that another time. But I went to Wembley as the first ever Champions League game of Tottenham Hotspur at Wembley, so that was interesting, even though we lost, and the record crowd.
As I said to you earlier, you fell for it, so well done.
But I mean, I won't linger on it, but there was one thing I just wanted to mention this on the podcast. I'd forgotten this ever happened, and I went to the game with my brother, and we went to the first ever game at the new Wembley, which was an England under-21s game. And it was something that will always make me laugh whenever I go there, because it's enormous when you're in the stadium. It's huge. You look at the people at the top tier in particular, might as well be in outer space. It's so far away. The people are these tiny little dots, and I've sat up there and you can't see anything, to the point you can't even differentiate barely between which side the player's on, even if they're playing in different coloured shirts. It's that far away. It was almost in black and white. The colour doesn't get to you. And
I saw an Oasis gig from there, and it was, they were beyond their best at the time that I went to see Oasis. It was one of their last gigs before they split up, and it was pointless being there. In fact, I think I spent most of my time chucking half full beer glasses over the top to see how far we could get them. They were plastic. It was fine. Everyone was doing it. Actually, maybe I shouldn't say that. It wasn't me.
Right.
If there's the North London Constabulary who are now going over video evidence from way back in 2000, I don't know when it was, 9. It wasn't me.
Yeah, but tell you what, one of the things, Andy, that happened on that when I went, which always makes me laugh, is that it's very rare that you go to a football match. I'll make the story quick so we get onto the money stuff. But it's very rare you go to a football match where there's no segregation. It's a very rare thing to. I mean, I know it happens, I think, in rugby, but in football you can't walk around the ground. And I happened to turn to my brother at that point, and this was probably about 6 years ago, whenever the ground opened, and said, "There is actually nothing stopping you, bar the probably 10,000 people on this particular row, going all the way round the top tier, saying, 'Excuse me, my seat. Can I get through to my seat?'" And I bet him, could he do that? And my brother technically holds the record as the first ever person to do a lap of honour of the Wembley Stadium, to the point where
that is brilliant.
He said, I've never told this story to anybody because it kind of got forgotten, but he set off to my right, and the last time I saw him at that point was him going along the road going, excuse me, I just get into my seat. Well, we could see him do that around the entire ground. He must have asked about, probably, you do the mass, 90,000 people, how many rows in Wembley? He must have asked about, it was well over a couple of thousand people probably, just to go along. Sorry, can I just get along to that seat? You could see this tiny little dot going round. It took him 25 minutes to do the entire lap of the top tier, going all the way, because there's nothing to stop you doing it because it wasn't segregated. So I just wanted, when I went there, I looked at it and couldn't believe he'd actually achieved that. I don't know if it's fame. No one actually knew he ever did it. But to go to 1,000 people in a row, sorry, can I get to my seat? And there must have been people who looked at him and thought, hold on, he's just gone across to the other set of steps and he's still going, and then thought nothing of it. So there you go. A story of a man who achieved a dream and said, excuse me, to 1,000 people, and actually left to the right and actually came back on the opposite side of the row and sat down. So anyway, that's enough of the stupid stories of what happens in Wembley. onto the money stuff. Right, what are we talking about this week, Andy?
Let's get it on. What have we got queued up for today? I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I'm going to do a quick piece on investing, and this has got a bit of investment focus, this podcast. And I've been to a conference this week, actually, where I went to about investing for income, and it was in the city, and I want to do a quick piece on that. And then I'm always asked, when I would go to like the awards thing I went to the other day, you start talking to people and they will start picking your brains about things. Everyone has different expertise and stuff like that. And of course, as you're trying to talk about what you do or answer questions, you start bringing up tips or analogies and things like that. And it suddenly dawned on me that there was an element of where, because these people are almost your peers and you trust them when you tell them things, you find yourself saying, look, yeah, this is what I do, but don't tell anyone I told you that. So a bit like your... I always remember years ago I got Sky TV, and this was before you had all the on-digital stuff where you had to plug your box in. And Sky used to make you plug your box in, didn't they? When you got Sky TV, They say you've got to have your box plugged into the phone line. In those days, there seemed to be no point. And I remember being in a flat, and the guy came and fitted the Sky box, and I had this annoying cable going across the room that you trip over, and he said, you've got to leave that plugged in. And I said, surely you don't have to. It was one of the biggest annoyances in the world. And he looked at me, obviously judged that I wasn't the kind of person to go and say anything, or probably not somebody working for Sky, and said, look, the reason they do that is they want to check that you're not going to take the box over to Spain like most people do and watch telly over there pretty much for free. So they send a signal down that line just to check where the box is. And they keep doing it. And if it moves, they write to you and say, well, where's the box, effectively? You need to plug it back in, and then they'll cancel it. And he said to me, but I will tell you, they do it 7 days after I install it. So just leave the wire plugged in for 7 days, and then you can pull it out. But don't tell anyone I told you that. So it was kind of taking that idea about money, and some of the things I might tell people off air and talk about things. I don't tell anyone I told you that. I'm doing a piece based around that, which is probably going to be some things in there, touch on things we've done before, 1 or 2 things. Yeah, don't tell anyone I told you that. So we'll get onto that. But anyway, back to the investing piece. We'll start with that. Right, I went to this conference where fund managers talk about equity income and all this sort of stuff. And for anybody who's wants to invest money, and say you had 100 grand, you want to put it into funds that are going to generate an income. Now, what you do is you put them into equity income funds. Right, so those funds generate an income by investing in shares, and they pay it out. That's what they're good at, and it's a certain group of them. And you should build a portfolio around those, rather than investing in funds that actually just try and grow your money and then you cash in chunks. That doesn't work, because what happens when markets plummet? We talked about it before on the podcast. If you do it that way around, markets plummet, you have to cash in a chunk, and then when it rebounds or falls further, you basically end up eating away at your capital, don't you? So what you want to do is get a pot of money, put them in equity income funds, and they generate a natural income which you can live off. Right. I went to this conference, and it's quite funny actually. I normally go to these things and I go suited and booted, because everyone else there is suited and booted. And I know to play the game, I used to work in the city, so this time it was 30 degrees that day. I decided to rock up in shorts and t-shirts. I didn't have flip-flops because I broke my flip-flops days before, but I did rock up in trainers. And you could tell there was this envy in the room of... I was the only person in a room of probably about 60 people, all very serious, talking about millions of pounds, in t-shirt and shorts, while everybody else is in their suits and ties and all this sort of stuff, waiting to be given permission to take their tie or loosen their tie in the 30-degree heat. But I thought, no, sod that. So I think I got some sort of admiration for that. And ironically, they all talk about being contrarian, how they're all such contrarian investors in the current environment. And I was tweeting about this because it's kind of ironic. In an environment that's 30 degrees, they all wear suits. And I was actually the only one who was truly contrarian, wearing my t-shirt and shorts. So it's kind of ironic that they say they don't follow everybody else, but they fundamentally do. It's ingrained in them to do it. But anyway, the point of what I wanted to talk about is when you pick these, how do you pick equity income funds? And you listen to some of these managers talk about yields and stuff like that, about how much their fund will pay out in income. Now, the yield figure is the thing that you'll see quoted everywhere. The yield of anything, whether it's your property or whether it's a fund, is effectively the income that it pays out, typically what it's paid out over the last 12 months, divided by the current price. So you can see that gives you a yield figure. So that gives you a steer that for what you pay, if you get a 5% yield, you're probably going to get 5% of that as an income a year. And that is what you see quoted everywhere on fund fact sheets or any literature around funds. And investors are always looking at yields. What's the yield, they say? Or the manager quotes their yield. And so it looks, go for a really big yield because it gives me lots of income. And this is just to highlight to people, this piece I'm doing on the podcast is that there's actually, you shouldn't do that. It's actually a false metric in a way to tell you what's the best income producers for you going forwards. And that's because yield is a function of the current price and the earnings that were paid out last year. Now there's two things that could go wrong there. Firstly, the earnings this year might not be the same as last year. And the other point is that the price may have fallen a hell of a lot over the last 12 months for very good reason. It could be a part of the market that is dodgy, that no one wants to be in because it's out of favour or whatever it is. So the price falls. So if you imagine that the yield of is a function of price, then you get what I mean. You get the earnings. I said it was price divided by earnings, but it's actually the other way around, because you think about the yield is actually the income divided by the price. So if you had a rent on a house that is obviously a small percentage of what you paid, that's why the yield is a small percentage figure. So when you're looking at the yield, what it can mean is if the price has plummeted a hell of a lot, it will actually push the yield up, because as a percentage, the income you might receive, because the income level might stay the same, because the company might pay out the same level of dividends or something like that, then the yield is much bigger. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. It's a bit like if you're earning £1,000 a month in rent, and the house price plummets, the yield, if someone was to buy that house that day from you, would be higher than what you got. That makes sense?
It does now. Now you've revisited it and got it right.
I was just so excited about being back on the podcast in a normal fashion. I got slightly carried away. But the point is that we focus on that yield figure, and we shouldn't obsess about it, because those variables can and do change. So there was some research that was done a few years ago that on funds, and we're looking at how reliable is a yield figure into determining the actual money you will get back, because that's what you should focus on. We talked about it before in a podcast about payouts and why payouts are important, and that's the pound and pence you get given by a share or a fund. That's what pays your bills, isn't it? That's what you can live off. If you were to use the property example, the rent you get is what matters to you, because that's what pays your mortgage. You don't pay your mortgage with the yield, you pay it with pounds and pence. So that's what's important. So you need to focus on that and the reliability of that stream. But they did some research to say, okay, but is yield a good indicator that if the yield is high and you buy a fund, will you earn more in pounds and pence, be paid out, and you get over the next few years than if you bought a low yielding stock? And actually the research showed that didn't hold, that if you automatically bought high yielding stuff, you didn't earn as much, you didn't necessarily earn more money in the next 5 years than if you'd bought a lower yielding stock. So something that could have been quoting you at 5%, when you summed out how much money you got paid out by that fund over the next 5 years versus one that might have been only yielding 3% at the start of the time frame, the 3% one actually may have given you more money. So there is a correlation falls down. So what I'm trying to say to people is look at the yield figure, don't obsess about it. It will give you an indication that you might be able to get a good level of income, but it won't guarantee that a high yielding one will necessarily pay you more, and you'll earn more actually in reality than a lower yielding one. So what does that mean? What do you do? What you need to do then is focus on those payout figures. They don't quote them in many places. You hardly ever see them. There's a push to try and get funds to put them on their fact sheets and the data. You need to focus on the reliability of that payout. So if you're thinking of a share, let's think of a share in one company. How regularly do they pay their dividends, and have they had a history of always paying them and growing them? There are companies out there that have done for decades. And those ones are the ones you want to buy if you want an income stream. You don't want somebody who's paying a load of money out in dividends and it's not sustainable and they stop it next year, because then you own a fund that's not paying you any income at all. And if the income stops, then that makes it less attractive and the price will probably fall. So 80-20 Investor is one solution, one of the only ones I know of. Obviously, it's my DIY investing service, but I did the analysis of that looked at all the payouts for all the income funds over the years to see how they've grown, if they've gone up, they've gone down, how reliable they are. So do a free trial of 80-20 Investor is the ultimate message of this piece. But as a takeaway, don't obsess about yield if you're looking at funds or shares, because it doesn't guarantee that you're going to earn more money than a lower yielding one. There we go. That's the first piece, Andy.
Good. Okay, makes perfect sense. And if you want to know more about 80/20 investing, go on to the website moneytothemasses.com or email Damien podcast@moneytothemasses.com for more information. Next bit, if I remember rightly, it's kind of the psst.
It is a psst, Andy. It's one of those things that I'm going to probably get a load of stick, and probably because there'll be people on there who say, I can't believe you've told people to do that. That's so unethical. I'm not telling people to do it. I'm just highlighting that these things exist. Okay, so don't shoot the messenger. We could have probably done a whole podcast on this. I could probably do another one on it. And I'm covering investing, bills, shopping, insurance. I'm just almost done a scattergun approach. I sat there before this podcast and come up with a whole bunch of ideas. So I'm going to rattle through them. There's quite a few here. And we'll... what should we start with, Andy? Should we start with something like shopping?
Yeah, let's do shopping. Funny enough, I've just done my online food shopping just before we came onto the pod. That's why I was a bit late. I was ordering some courgettes.
I like to. Good to see where I rank in the world with you, Andy. I am somewhere below courgettes, and I'm not quite sure what I'm above.
I stopped short of ordering some cauliflower, so you're somewhere behind courgettes, but in front of cauliflower.
Just where I like to be. One of the things I was going through some of the lists of stuff that I talk about, and rain check vouchers, Andy. If you go shopping, I used to work in Tesco's many years ago, 20 years ago in fact. I used to work there between university holidays. It's not between them, but during university holidays, I should say. And one of the things that was news to me, I never realised it actually, that they even existed, but lots of supermarkets give you rain check vouchers. And by that I mean, if you wander in to a supermarket and you see an amazing deal, whatever it is that floats your boat, it might be on booze, it might be food, that's something that drew you to go to the supermarket, and you get there and there are none left, and of course you are pretty disappointed by that fact, then it used to be employees, it probably is now just the managers, but have a discretion to give you a voucher that you can redeem at a later date, unspecified date, and get that same deal as if it was there. So let's just say if it was a crate of lager, you could get that crate of lager at half price if that was the offer, but there were none there when you went. So this is one of those things that you could go and exploit this. And I know people who have done it. When I used to work at Tesco's many moons ago, people say, look, this deal's run out. If you go in there and ask them for a voucher, they're going to have to give you one. So they all do them. They vary. I think Asda do something called smiley vouchers, that if you go up there, they give you £1 voucher off money or some money off voucher if you can't get a deal. But the supermarkets do have these things, so you can go in there and you don't even have to want the thing. You just say you do. So don't tell them that I told you to do that. Same thing, but you can. I know people who've done it, and you go in there and you see something you don't even like, Stella. But if you went up there and said, I want Stella or whatever it is, then you could get it at a cheap price. But obviously you're going to have to buy it in the future to get the deal, so you could flog it to your mate. If we're going to go on to other things, this is one that is really, really naughty, and I don't even know if I should say it, but I remember when I published my book on Amazon, and you can ask for refunds on Amazon books. As you probably know, Andy, being an author, and you'll probably get in trouble for telling people this, but if you buy an ebook, you could buy mine and you can ask for a refund, and it's automatic within a certain period of time, and you can read a book and you can get your money back. And the reason I didn't tell you to do this, I just know it exists because there are students out there who will study, download expensive textbooks, and basically do this trick and via online services, and then ask for a refund days later when they've written their essay or dissertation to get their money back. So it isn't ethical. It isn't. You shouldn't be doing it. But I'm just telling you as an author, and I've had it happen to me, that it exists.
It does exist. It's the bane of my life, and don't do that, people. But obviously you can. And if you are going to do it, just don't do it with books such as the 30-Day Money Plan, As They Slept, 1, 2, 3, and 4, or Minimise Me. There we go. We've got a bit of a book plug in as well. Good stuff.
Right. I was sitting there when I was thinking about this, and I was in my kitchen, and I happened to look around, and I just stare at my boiler, the bane of my life, which breaks down on a regular basis, very regular basis, in fact. And British Gas, I think my boiler is notorious in British Gas. In fact, I think I got to the point where some plumbers with British Gas wouldn't want to come round to my house. They just complain as soon as they walked in the door, as if this thing was. You know what the usual thing is? Oh, you need to get a new boiler. And I'm thinking, well, I don't really. All the time I'm paying you probably 40 quid a month or whatever it is to keep coming around and fixing it. And I see it as me keeping them in employment, but they just see it as me annoying them. But you can shop around for those insurances, can't you, that get progressively expensive as your boiler ages. But again, by a quirk of fate, I worked out that you can almost reset the clock on some of these insurances by taking out a new contract. Because I took out a new contract because the guy accidentally cancelled mine. I don't know if he was trying to drop a hint. And then when I took out a new one, the price dropped by about a third because the history of my case was lost, if you got what I mean, to the Jesus Christ, there's a wasp in it. It's attacking me. I can't believe it. It's like 10 o'clock at night. There's a wasp attacking me. Sorry, Andy. I'm going to have to get this thing out. Bloody hell.
This is staying in the podcast, so because listeners will be desperate to know what's happened to this wasp.
Well, I want to rescue it, Andy. If you hear me scream, you know he's very dozy. Hold on. Right. I'm opening the window. Oh, it's dive bombing me. Oh, Christ, I'm just trying over the chair. It's going for the lights, I think. I don't think it's going to go out the window any time soon. Right. I'm not quite sure, Andy, how I'm going to do this on the... Right.
This probably won't make the edit, but I'm just going to give you a brief commentary on what I'm watching right now. I'm watching Damien wander around without his headphones in. He can't hear me. He's wandering around the room. He's wafting a black diary. Well, we've got something for the outtakes for next year. He's still wafting a black diary around. He looks very concentrated. Maybe it's a Bible. It might not be a black diary. It might be a Bible. He has uttered the words Jesus Christ a few times. Perhaps it is a Bible.
I don't want to kill it though, Andy. What thing is, every time it goes up to the light, it's getting its wings singed and getting pretty cross about the whole thing. I'm just standing here holding a black book at it. I'm not quite sure what. All I can see is you laughing. You know. Oh.
At this point, David's got no idea that I've been doing a commentary.
Oh, where did it go? I was looking at you, and now I've just lost it.
He's frustrated now because he was looking at me, and now he has no idea where the wasp is. And I've never seen a guy look more panicked in all my life.
Oh, well, that's not helpful, is it?
He's wandered off screen. I'm slightly concerned he might get stung now. Actually, who am I kidding? I'm quite looking forward to him getting stung. And at this point, I must reiterate that Damien cannot hear me because he hasn't got his headphones in.
It's back.
I really would like to keep this in, and if this did make the edit and you are listening to this, firstly, I apologise because you're no doubt waiting for Damien to give you some excellent money advice, which he is doing, granted. That's it. I can't talk. But I hope that this is in some way entertaining for you, even though you can't quite see what's going on. Right now I can't see what's going on because he's gone off screen and he's gone quiet as well. So I'm currently looking at what looks to be Damien's bedroom roof.
This thing is so angry.
And I love the fact you can hear him in the background every so often.
Quite understandable, really.
He's now swinging a black book.
He's going mental. Fuck! It just attacked me. It's so disorientated. This thing is flying at 100 miles an hour, right?
Okay, Damien's gone off screen again. Doesn't look like he's really worked out what he's going to do. It doesn't look like he's trying to kill it. He's kind of trying to waft it towards a window, which is very noble of him. But every time it gets near him,
where the hell's this thing come from?
It does look like he wants to give it a good whack. So I'm not sure if he does want to rescue it as much as just wants to knock its brains out. It does look quite big, I'll be honest. It could be a hornet. And as a Watford fan, I'd be absolutely devastated if he killed it. I always harboured interests in commentating on sport. I always wanted to be a football commentator. That's what I.
Yes, got it.
And yeah, my vocation now is a Wasp commentator. Hello, he's back.
Sorry about that. It's currently under a book. I'm going to release it when when we've finished. Right. I've never
I
seen.
have to say that all of that is going to make the edit because it's the funniest thing I've ever listened to.
No, you can't
and
put that.
Witnessed and seen.
I can't do that. I tell you what, Andy. People who I've got to shut the windows again now. The people who don't realise I'm sitting in my loft room, okay, and it's completely shut. It's obviously been open during the day, and it's what time is it now? It's quarter to 10 at night, so it's obviously dark. And he just rose like I don't know. He just came sort of floating up, and then just went mental because every time he was going into the spotlights, he was obviously getting burnt and getting more and more angry about the whole situation, and just was dive bombing everything in the room. And unfortunately, he's currently taking a time out underneath a book in the corner. So I'll. Yeah.
I was at one point doing a commentary and taking bets on whether you were trying to waft it out the window or whether you were trying to knock its brains out.
No.
At one point, I thought it might have been a black diary, but at one point I thought it might have been a Bible because all I could see was you holding this book and going, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ.
I tell you what, it does look. I think. Well, I was trying to. I thought. It's like I was trying to exercise the thing. No, I was trying to chase it out the window, but it wasn't having any of it. It was struggling with the Velux and how they operate, and it has to fly out straight rather than up and at it. Anyway, I've it's currently under the Bible. I've not. My notes are in there. I'm going to have to do the rest of this podcast off the top of my head now, but. The quality won't dip. Let me just shut the windows, Andy, because otherwise you'll be listening to the sirens of London. Hold on. Right.
I have to say, after the 100th episode and going back over the previous episodes and finding all the sort of outtakes and the funny bits and the stories that we enjoyed, I thought it was going to take at least 10 to 20 episodes for us to find something amusing and funny to put in next year's compilation or whenever we decide to do another one. But bang, episode 101, there it is.
Well, I didn't expect it anyway. Yeah, this is a serious money show. This isn't a chase a wasp around a room. While I didn't want to open the door, you see, I was thinking of the family. I didn't want it to escape. I could have just put it outside and it become their problem and go downstairs, but I didn't want to do that. Anyway, what did we talk about? We did the rain check vouchers, didn't we? And I was saying about British Gas, and British Gas do drive me insane. One of the things is, I know people who cancel their insurance policies during the summer months for those things like the boilers. I know that get it checked out, get your free check, and then cancel, and then restart it again. Now, I've not come across anything that stops people doing that. I know people who have done it regularly, which is not really in the ethics of these things of trying to get all the free central heating checkups and then saying, right, okay, or thanks very much, my boiler's in working order and I'm not going to pay for the rest of the year. But there will be sometimes caveats and admin charges if you cancel contracts early in some of these things. On the shopping front, I always do this and I feel bad, but I don't know. Should we save our high street? I'm not sure. I regularly go into shops and I go and look for products and I think that looks good, I want that. And I pull my phone out and go on Amazon. They've got a good app that scans the barcode and just scan the barcode and then press a button and order it on Amazon and it arrive a day later. And not buy it from the shop and buy it cheaper. But do you want another one that's, again, I'm not telling you people to do this, but if you've got, Amazon Prime, okay, is quite good, it's quite a good deal if you shop regularly, isn't it? You get, I think, the TV stuff, and you get free next day delivery, don't you, on Amazon Prime?
You do, and there's music and all sorts.
I forget how much it costs a year or a month or whatever. It's got a charge anyway. I want to say £70 a year, but I may be off the mark. I don't know what it is. But the thing is, once you regularly use Amazon Prime or Amazon generally, first of all you have to get things sent to your own address. But actually after that, you can get it sent anywhere. So if you want an Amazon Prime account, you could actually go with a couple of mates, or you know someone who's got one, and you want something delivered the next day. You get them to buy it on their Amazon account and just send it to your house. And so you can get next day delivery because somebody else has already got Amazon Prime and they don't mind sharing, or you might share it with a bunch of you so you don't have to pay for it. So it is a quirk of their system, but hey, they don't seem to mind. I think they probably hope that people would actually want the other content, but you can get around charges by doing that. The other stuff, what we're going to do, some of the others on investing. Now, this is... People always say to me about financial advisors, and I can't condone this, but I know, again, people who've done it. Financial advisors will give you, sometimes, most times, will even write you reports or make you recommendations and things like that without necessarily charging you for it if they're going to get paid somehow towards the back end. Now, that got stopped a lot because they can't take commissions. But you can still get quite a bit of a people if you talk to them on the phone, like in terms of advisors. A lot of the people who sell things like life insurance products and things like that will give you a lot of advice on the phone. And I know there are people who will take that and actually go and do it themselves. There is nothing stopping you doing that. I can't condone that, but I've had people say to me about how should you shop around with financial advisors. Well, yeah, I don't see why you shouldn't. They will tell you no, you shouldn't do that. But you're well in your rights too. But of course that leaves them open to people getting their advice and almost going and do it themselves with somebody else. Now, I'm not saying you should do that, but I know people who have done it, and that's why financial advisors do and should charge fees for the stuff they do up front, because then people can't do that. But there are people out there who do. If people want to find out about asset allocation, they say to me, how do you know we've got some good tools and things like that, and how would you know where to invest your money? Now, there are ways around trying to find out without actually getting somebody's expert advice. Go and look at a tracker fund, okay, like one Vanguard might make, or somebody like that, or a successful fund like that that's tracking a variety of different indices, global or whatever. Go and look at the asset mix on the fund fact sheet. The fund fact sheet is free, it's out there. Now you've been told the asset allocation of that particular fund. So if it's a tracker and it's just buying cheap trackers in all of these areas, it tells you the rough split, and it even tells you the top 10 holdings, which I'll come on to in the next piece.
So you can basically go and do it yourself.
You could go and build your own tracker if you wanted. You can't necessarily...
Yeah.
The thing is, they do have economies of scale, okay? There's two things. That data can be a month old, and they do, but it doesn't change that much on a tracker. Trust me, I look at these things all the time. And they do have economies of scale, so they can drive down costs. But if you want to use it as a means of getting some free kind of guidance on asset allocation, well, what's wrong with that? I mean, that is something that is very hands-off. It's very static. It's not going to give you something that's going to beat the market, because that's what they do. They kind of track the market, if you get what I mean. But the ones that are getting the best results, there's nothing stopping you looking at that. Or, indeed, looking at what some of the best managers are doing. Where are they investing? You can see their fact sheets. And there was somebody who once asked me and said, how would you... And it's a tool that I thought about building for 80/20 Investor. But I deal with funds that... to invest in funds, which is what most people do. But let's take Neil Woodford, that well-known manager. He might publish his top 10 holdings, as will a bunch of other managers. And in fact, if you looked at the top 10 fund holdings across the board on some of the more consistent performers, not necessarily the best ones all the time, because they probably have a lot of the same top 10s. That's the problem with them. But you get some good ideas about where to go and buy funds by looking at the ones that they bought, because some of the more concentrated funds only have 50 stocks in them. And so if they're already telling you the top 10 or 20, you're getting a bit of a steer. And the top 10 tend to probably make up about a third of the fund anyway.
Yeah.
So you're getting a steer if you compare against some of the top ones. It's a bit of work. It's going to be a work looking across all those fund fact sheets, which is why people don't do it. But if you want to be lazy, you can invest like Neil Woodford. You can't see everything he's invested in because he won't tell you for that reason. But you can get some insight. And going back to that equity income stuff, I know people who... I've been talking to them and they said looking for ideas for good income shares. Well, if you look at the funds, what the fund managers are buying, and the ones who are doing well, producing regular income year in, year out, and increasing their payouts, well, they don't tend to change their funds that often. They will tell you the turnover rate that's sometimes quoted of their funds, and that turnover rate will gives you a steer of how regularly they keep switching stuff. If it's really low and someone continually grows their payout, well, do you know what? Those stocks he's got in his top holdings are going to be pretty reliable because he's producing a regular income, doing better than all the others, and he's not changing much. Well, it must be these bad boys that are doing it. So, again, I didn't tell you this. That's not financial advice. I'm just telling you the dots that are out there, and I'm telling how you can join them up if you want to. One of the other is while we're on investing, go and negotiate your fees on any fund platform you go to. Fund platforms are desperate for business. They really are. And they are some fantastic deals in a way out there. And some of them are very good value. But if you have basically a lot of money, a decent sum, we're probably talking a few $100,000, and you're going to go to a fund platform, even a well-known one, you could go to them and say, I don't want to pay that amount. I want to negotiate it a bit lower. And they do have leeway to do it. It's not well known, but I know I've seen it happen. And financial advisors do it. And retail customers, i.e. me and you, when I say retail, that's what I mean, you can do it. So go and negotiate on those things if you've got enough money. Or go to a platform that maybe not one of the big boys and you have a bigger sway, because they don't have large sums on their platform. So therefore you are important. So you can go and negotiate. But don't tell them I told you that Damien said you're going to give me a good deal. I'm just telling you I know that it happens. So the other one, this is one that's probably fairly well known really, but if you want to get a good savings rate, savings are appalling at the moment in the high street, is to do the merry-go-round of go and get a high interest savings account, and there are quite a few out there, and go and also start with an account that will give you cash incentives. Now if you go on the Money to the Masses site, there are we do a list of accounts that have incentives for you to open accounts with them, so current accounts. They might give you £100, £200 to switch to them. So there's two things really you could do. You could do the high street savings account ruse where you go for the ones which say, they'll pay you 5% if you put in £700 a month or whatever it is. And there's certain caveats. Well, you can just keep putting the same amount of money in and just move it from one to the other to the other. So you just line them up and you trigger the criteria that will get your savings that amount of money. So you put in the maximum you can in each of those accounts. And then you just have this one £750 or £1,000 that rotates around between them all, and it goes back to the start again and goes round and round and round. And you've met the criteria of having a regular £1,000 a month paid into that account, but it doesn't really matter where it comes from. So you could end up having 10 grand of savings, put four say in each of a couple of these high current accounts. There's a list of them on Money to Masses website if you go to the Best Buy tables, and you can see there's a table for those accounts, and you can see the criteria. You just put the amount you can in each, and then you have this one bit of money that goes around and moves about, and you set it up, you automate it by standing order. And I think they maybe know people do it, but there's nothing to stop you, and at the end of the day you just got to set it up and set the ball rolling. And if you also manage to combine that with switching a current account, then that's a good ruse people do almost every year. They will switch to one of these accounts paying you £200. That's £200 for doing nothing. And if there's another one that would pay you, for example, First Direct, they will pay you money if you go, say I think it's about somewhere between 100 and 150 usually, and they'll pay you another lump sum after 6 months if you leave. So you can just keep moving around and taking that money. They don't care. That's how it works. So I'm just telling you can do it and play the system. There are people who do it. But it wasn't me who told you. Right, what else? I mean, the podcast is longer than I'd hoped it would be. So I've got to do it. I'll do two more. And I do this every year. It's the same old game. I get bored of doing it. I don't know why they bother. But RAC and AA, you want to get cover for those two. Now, if you're with one of them, they will go. You'll pay perhaps £100 that year, and then the next year they'll tell you that it will go up to. You'll get renewal notice, and it will go up to 130. Every year they'll do the same game, and then you'll go and look, and they'll be giving their brand new customers the same deal as you, but for 100. So you ring up and go, "Hold on, I don't want to pay 130. I want to pay 100," and they say, "No, it's only for new people." You say, "But the RAC do the same thing, and I'm going to go to them then," because actually they just give you the same. It's the same service, isn't it? Really? And they go, "Okay, Mr. Fahy, don't worry about it. We'll give you £100." It happens every year. I've done it for I don't know how long. I do the same game. I said to the guy, "Could you put a note on your file to say, shall we just send out the the renewal notice at £100 because Mr. Fahy will ring me up every year and we'll play this same game. And he was like, laughed, and unfortunately I can't do that. But you can. So every year you can get it 30% cheaper because you just look at the competitors, the direct competitors, and say, well, they're doing it, or you're doing it for new people. And you will get it every year. And the last but no means least on this one, which is the one that saved me the most money in the last year, was the Car Wow app. Do you remember I was talking about that? It was Car Wow. It's a website that enables you to, if you want to buy a new car, you can put out what you want or in the website, so whatever car you want, and it'll fire it out to all the dealers around the country, and they'll come back with deals competing to try and, I mean, it could be a dealer within the same brand, so a Kia or whatever it is you want to buy, Vauxhall, whatever, they will all come back and give you different deals, and because they're in different parts of the country, you'll get better rates. And the idea of the website is that obviously if you go through and you get a great deal and they'll chuck things in, you can kind of play the people against each other, although the dealerships can't see what each other's offered. Then when you place a deal, the website gets some money. Well, of course, I did it. I used the site but didn't go through the website itself because actually you end up, gives you a great starting point in negotiations with the dealers, and then you can actually get the power of the negotiation on your side of the table, because I sent it out. I did a podcast on it, didn't I? And I sent it out to lots of dealers, and I got saved about $2 or $3 on the price of a new car, because I had lots of competitive ones. I had somebody down in, I don't know, I'm up in London, but they were down in somewhere like Southampton, were going to give me a great deal. And I just went to the guy around the corner and said, well, can you at least match that? And in the end, you negotiate, and they do, and maybe even better it. So again, I didn't tell you to use the site and not go through it right to the end. I'm just telling you what I did, and you can save yourself thousands. So it's one of those things, a bit like the Sky guy who told me, you can unplug it after a week. I'm just telling you can plug the stuff in and you can just go and do what you want with the information and save yourself money and not have to give anybody a cut of it. But there you go. I mean, I might do another podcast if people like them, of things that I shouldn't tell you but will. Maybe in the future.
Can I maybe finish it off with one of my own and tying it back into to the football that we talked about at the beginning of the podcast? If you ever go to a sports game that's a one-off and there's memorabilia, there's always people that are selling stuff for that game. So it might be one of these awful scarves, which I never recommend you get, but it's a half and half scarf, or it's got the, if it's a semi-final or if it's a final, it's got the date on it. Never, ever, ever, ever pay full price on the way in. What you do is you go in, you enjoy the game, and then you think to yourself, I wouldn't mind taking home a little bit of memorabilia for the game. And you see these guys outside the stadium and they are desperate for your business. I once got a £15 scarf for £2, and that was on the way out. And basically the guy was trying to sell them for £10, and I said, well, what are you going to do? He literally had 100 in a box. I said, what are you going to do to them? What are you going to do with them after today? And I knew he was going to have to bin them. It's if you've ever seen The Apprentice, it's basically the last 20 seconds of The Apprentice where they try and get rid of everything for 20p. So yeah, there's my tip. If you're going to a game and you want some memorabilia, buy it on the way out. You can get it for an absolute steal.
Good. I like that, Andy. I could have done that at Wembley yesterday when I went up there and watched Spurs lose. I probably would have been given those scarves away, the Spurs Monaco scarves, because they've got absolutely no long-term...
Yeah.
Because you can't even say we broke the crowd attendance record, which we did, but we'll probably break it the next game as well, because you need one more person to break it. So it's probably not even going to be remembered for anything other than failure, I think.
Yeah.
But on this, as we're going to finish the podcast, if anybody else has these things I shouldn't tell you, but or I didn't tell you this, those sorts of things, and we'll read some of them out, because we won't tell them who told us. We'll just read them out, because there are things like this that we keep them on. Like, none of the things I just told you are illegal. None of them are wrong in any way. They are just perhaps using things not maybe in the way they're intended, but you're not going to get in trouble for. So we don't want people necessarily ringing us up and telling us that, don't pay for your TV license or anything dodgy like that, or ways to get around that, because that is actually against the law. But anything that is a good idea, good tip, we're all ears, aren't we, Andy?
We are indeed. Damien, good stuff. I've enjoyed it. Anything to finish the pod off?
No.
Other than we want to know what happened to that wasp.
Well, he's still reading the book down there. I'm staring at it, and I don't know. I hope he's alive, but I know it's one of those unfortunate things. I know if I move it and he's still alive, he's going to be severely pissed off, and he's going to just be. He's gonna go mad. I mean, the way he was going, he was like a drunk in a pub. You know, the guy who's going around, he's taking out on everybody. He was trying to smash every single ceiling light I've got here, and with no. He wasn't even punching himself out, to be honest. He was like a lunatic. So if he comes out there, my wife's going to come up here in a minute, and she will be hitting the roof if she sees that thing flying around. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, I tell you what, you certainly earned your stripes in this one.
Oh.
You certainly created a buzz. I hope there's not a sting in the tail after this one. And
this is why we have you on the podcast.
You spent the whole podcast just winging it. There we go. There's 4 wasp puns.
Yeah, good. Yeah, until next week, we won't have any puns. Yeah, good. See you next time.
See you later.
Don't forget to claim your free copy of Damien's best-selling book, The 30-Day Money Plan. Sort your finances in just 5 minutes a day, worth $4.99. Just go to moneytothemasses.com/podcast to find out how.